Welcome to Embrace Your Inner Boldness, the podcast dedicated to empowering you to live confidently, embracing all parts of who you truly are. I'm Melissa Henning-Frank, and I'm the founder, success coach, and consultant of Becoming Bold LLC, and you can count on me to be your guide on this incredible journey of self-discovery and transformation. Let's get right to it. Hello. Today's episode is really about the journey of healing and self-improvement. It's about seeking to understand ourselves and others, specifically how we show up in the world with all of our humanness and our emotional wounds. We'll dig into how we may ourselves be perceived and how we may perceive others. We'll figure out how to look beyond the surface. And we'll talk about ways we can make the world a better place just by prioritizing healing our wounds. Let's start by thinking about some scenarios of situations we might encounter on any given day. And I want you to think about how often do you actually go through your days finding yourself getting frustrated, getting anxious, or getting bothered with people. First, there's your spouse who can't seem to remember your pet peeve of taking that last bit of coffee. Then there's the aggressive driver weaving in and out of traffic during your morning commute. Maybe it's the woman on the radio whose voice just really irritates you. There's the cashier who seems as though they're miserable scanning your groceries. There's the loud coworker who takes over all the talking space in meetings and cuts down anyone who is, in quotes, too quiet. Maybe it's the boss who no one ever really knows what kind of mood they're going to be in that day. Maybe it's the friend who canceled the plans you were looking forward to after work. Could be the relative that you have difficulty telling no to when they need you to do something for them. What about the overly chipper person who can't possibly be as happy as they always seem to be? What about the scary coworker who no one really knows or understands? What about the introverted leader who doesn't seem all that interested in connecting outside of any topic that's not about work? What about the extroverted friend who knows maybe way more than they need to about people, and they're the first to spread fresh gossip? What about the early career employee who becomes a nervous wreck if a text or an email seems to have a tone, or maybe it doesn't have enough emojis in it to clarify whether they're happy or pissed off? In each of these scenarios, people are likely behaving automatically with their emotional wounds taking control. Also, you experiencing people in these scenarios are reacting automatically with your emotional wounds taking control. And we do this without even thinking, multiple times a day. Think about it. How do you react when these things are happening in front of you? What emotions come up when something like these examples happens? What stories do you tell yourself about why these things happen? Have you ever paused and thought about how each of these scenarios likely happen out of an automatic behavior caused by emotional wounds? When we have any kind of impact on others when we're interacting with them, and when others have any kind of impact on us, each of us are perceiving and applying meaning based on what's in our metaphorical backpack that I've talked about before, where our life experiences are stored and that we carry with us wherever we go. It's going to be the extremely rare exception where someone is walking around with a backpack that doesn't include some kind of emotional wounding or trauma, but we don't think about that and we don't talk about that. Our experiences, and especially our emotional wounds, impact who and how we are. And we're going to talk about that now. Emotional wounds are traumas or emotional disturbances that result from negative experiences in our past. Whether we realize it or not, these wounds can deeply impact the way we show up in the world. These wounds, if not properly tended to, are going to take up a lot of space in our metaphorical backpack. And on the flip side, even when our wounds are tended to properly, they're still going to take up some space, though it might not be as much as it used to if we're doing the work to heal them. Our wounds can take the driver's seat without us realizing what's happening. There's a therapy called internal family systems, and IFS refers to this phenomenon as our managers. So basically, our defense mechanisms that we subconsciously form and tap into when we feel threatened. IFS therapy is something that Gabby Bernstein talks a lot about. I've mentioned her on my podcast before. I love listening to her. She's got a ton of good advice. So check out her Dear Gabby podcast if you want to dive into that. I highly recommend learning more about internal family systems. And hopefully down the road, we'll have an episode that talks a little bit about that. So our automatic thoughts and reactions are typically fueled by our wounds as a defense mechanism. I say automatic because we don't always realize that's what's happening, and we might blame others for our own wound-driven behaviors. Wounds can come from so many different experiences, and if you are listening to this and you don't think you have any, consider these common sources of emotional wounds: childhood trauma, relationship issues, workplace stress, grief and loss, health issues, financial struggles, unresolved personal issues, major events like national disasters, accidents, or violence, the stress of raising kids in an uncertain world. These wounds and traumas, regardless of size, and whether they're trauma with a capital T or a lowercase t, likely come from some type of need that wasn't met. And what happens when we have these wounds? Well, we often push these things down. We deny them, hide them. We might just suck it up, get over it. We might think others have had it worse, so who are we to dwell on it? And so forth. And for the most part, that approach is fine. We find other things to occupy our time and our thoughts, and we move forward. That is until something reminds our subconscious of what we've been through. So take a moment to think about a recent event that bothered you. Was it something at home, with a friend, at work? I'm going to use an example here, but feel free to think of your scenario and how it lines up with this example. So let's say someone cuts you off in traffic and you immediately get pissed off. You say something nasty and you carry that irritation with you for the rest of your commute. You probably don't even consciously realize what's happening here. Why did you get so pissed off? What were the thoughts that you were thinking? And what story were you creating to explain why this person cut you off? Maybe you're assuming that the driver had an undeserving sense of entitlement. Maybe you're assuming the driver sucks as a driver and shouldn't be on the road. Maybe you're automatically reacting because they carelessly put you and your passengers in danger of hitting them. Maybe you're so sick of people not considering your needs, like ever. Maybe they remind you of someone from your childhood or your adulthood who took something from you that wasn't theirs to take. Maybe the wounded parts of you are directing your instincts, your words, your reactions, your middle finger as you flip them off after speeding up so you can show them you're not one to be taken advantage of. Let's dig in some more about how our wounds show up in our behaviors. There's a phenomenon with people who have been through trauma. They tend to either take on the persona of their abuser, or they might go opposite and become the empath, the enabling codependent, likely attracting a narcissist, not much different than their abuser. So when a child goes through something awful, they have to make a decision in order to feel as though they have some kind of control. They'll ask themselves, is it my fault or is it the world's fault? If it's the world's fault, it could give them a sense of being able to blame something outside of themselves, and they could become bitter, putting up a wall, becoming controlling, and that's just how they cope. If they decide it's their fault, the sense of control comes from feeling like it's up to them to fix themselves without having to rely on anyone outside of them. Oftentimes, wounded people will gravitate towards groups with similar beliefs as a way to build a safety net and feel like they're not alone. For example, any other kind of group that gives them a sense of, I'm not alone. There's other people who think and act just like me. And another example that might be kind of hard to think about is even people who join a gang. It's that desire to be accepted instead of rejected. And sometimes people will do horrendous things in the name of feeling like they belong to a group that will help them feel protected. Think about social media and all of the posts that you see there. People often post things that they feel emotionally charged up about. They might be looking for an outlet for their own anger. They will put up a controversial topic that opens the door for argument. And their fight sometimes has little to do with their posted topic and more about something inside themselves that need to be healed. They get this drive that causes them to find things that they want to stand up for and defend. I know I've been there before. It's like there's an itch inside themselves that they need to scratch. It's an itch that says they need to lash out for whatever it is or what they feel helpless on the inside about. Unhealed emotional wounds and trauma can cause things like anxiety or depression. It can make you feel angry and irritable. There's defensiveness, trust issues, low self-esteem. There might be avoidance of people or emotional numbness or numbing out with any kind of substances. It could be constant negativity or physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, or even more serious health concerns can happen because of unhealed wounds. It could look like saying yes when you really want to say no. It could be overextending yourself because you're unable to uphold boundaries. It's maybe too dangerous. It shows up as addictive behaviors, and it can show up as hyper-independence, the kind of attitude that you don't need anybody else. I believe we are here to heal and be healed, and our experiences are catalysts for our growth if we can recognize them as just that. And maybe our wounds are the only thing stopping us from being who we want to be and who we came here to be. So if you're hearing all of this and you can see yourself in some of these behaviors and it's reflecting in you some of the time, most of the time, or all of the time, and you want to make a change for the better, listen up, because here's 3 steps to improve how we show up in the world. First, start with becoming more self-aware. Why is this important? Well, self-awareness is crucial for identifying wounds and changing your behaviors. If you don't acknowledge it, it's going to remain a blind spot, and it will continue taking the lead on your life. There's a saying that goes something like, if you don't heal, you'll continue bleeding on people who didn't cut you. I'll add to that and say, you'll continue having the same arguments, but with different people. You'll continue feeling resentful as you do so much for others and it's not reciprocated. You'll continue feeling insecure in your relationships. You'll continue having the same problems, but in different places. Your emotions will remain stuck in your body and manifest later as stress, worry, or illness. How do you become more self-aware? Hang in there, I'll tell you. So in the moment, when you feel triggered, hurt, offended, or disrespected, you really need to practice the pause. It takes 6 seconds, just 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. To calm down the chemical reaction in our brains that makes us freak out. You've heard the advice to count to 10 before reacting, but it's actually 6 seconds. So when you feel that emotional charge, let's say you got disrespected or someone cut you off in traffic, and assuming it's not an immediate emergency, do your best to pause before you say or do anything. And if you do that, you'll allow your logical mind to step in and find a solution instead of your emotional mind, run by your emotional wounds and traumas, doing or saying something that you regret later. Over time, you'll want to work on really noticing when you feel that emotional charge and pay attention to what you're telling yourself about it. Notice what you say and what you do about it. Try to figure out where that story came from and why you act the way you do. Don't put judgment on this either. Have a lot of grace for yourself as you go through this process. If you can keep judgment out of it, you're going to get to the root and heal a lot quicker. You could also do some journaling. So use your notes app or even a physical notebook. Capture 3 things when you feel that emotional charge. So capture the scenario, what was actually going on, what were the thoughts that you attached to that scenario, and then brainstorm ideas of where that came from. Don't feel like you have to get that perfect. Over time, you're definitely going to notice a pattern of exactly what needs to be healed. Another way to improve how you show up in the world with emotional wounds and traumas is reframing negative beliefs. This is actually a topic that will probably be beat to death throughout many of my episodes because it's that important. So why is this important? Changing negative beliefs about yourself and about others is going to transform your behaviors. Your beliefs about why things are the way they are shape the way you show up in the world. If you're always looking for shit, you're always going to see shit, and you're likely going to act like shit. So if you can aim to assume good intent when something shitty happens, you'll notice a shift in your stress levels, and you'll feel more in control of how you're feeling in every single moment. Over time, your nervous system will become much more regulated, you'll be much calmer, and you'll be better able to solve problems versus getting all tangled up in a stress ball because of them. So how do you reframe negative beliefs? It's through shifting your vibration with cognitive restructuring. Catch yourself when you're in a negative thought pattern and make a conscious decision to think a different thought about it. Find a better feeling thought. What if what you're thinking about the other person isn't even accurate? What if what you're thinking about the other person is a projection from your wounded self? What is a better feeling thought that you can think instead? Another thing to do is cultivate a positive mindset. So write down 3 positive affirmations or mantras that help you when you feel that emotional charge. It's going to be something that helps you build up a counter activity when you feel that emotional charge. So some examples that I like to use if I feel triggered in any way. One of my favorite ones is everything is always working out for me. Immediately I feel my body calm down, my heart slows down a little bit. I feel much more equipped to handle whatever it is in front of me. Another one you could say is I am calm, collected, and in control. Another one is I assume good intent. So over time, you're going to notice that you're seeing more good things, more positive people, more kindness, more positivity, because you're attracting that into your life with your intentions. Another thing that you can do is get excited about seemingly small things. So when I think about how I grew up and I reflect on the difficulties I experienced and how they could have shaped me and how I overcame an adverse childhood experience, I will say this: my imagination and my mindset saved me. I had a natural ability to envision a better way. I guess I should say I have, because I still feel like that is one of my superpowers. And when I was a child, it might actually have been considered dissociation, but regardless, I was always able to create a world experience in my mind that was much healthier than my external world was at the time. I was also really good at finding joy in small things. So one thing that really stands out to me is how I could pull myself up and out of sadness or stressful situations by looking forward to things that we usually take for granted. Like I would get excited about new shampoo that I knew I was going to be able to use in the morning, or especially this one, a new pair of socks. I would love getting a new pair of socks, and actually still to this day, I get extra excited about socks. And it might sound silly, but my point is, the more we notice the small things and the more we get excited about all the glimmers that exist in our environment, the more our focus is on positive things, the easier it becomes to not get weighed down by the difficulties in life. Noticing as many good things as you can, moment after moment, day after day, is the way to coping with the hard things, which will end up seeming like they're happening fewer and farer Is that even a word? Fewer and far between. Fewer and far between when your mind is trained to see so much good in the world. Another way to change how you show up in the world is creating some healthy habits for yourself. And why this is important is because healthy habits and routines are going to create that sense of security and safety within us. When we know what's coming, when we know what to expect, we feel more in control. And when we feel like we're taking care of ourselves, our outlook on life becomes lighter, calmer, and more productive. So how do you create healthy habits? I have an exercise for you. And what you're going to do is determine what's important to you in these 4 areas. So physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. And what you're going to do is define your why for each of these important aspects of your life. So for example, why is it important to take care of yourself physically? My why for that one is feeling strong and healthy builds my confidence. And I actually have this written on a whiteboard that I sectioned off into quarters. And each of these aspects has their own part on this whiteboard. And I update it every month. And then the next one, why is it important to take care of yourself emotionally? For mine, I reach my highest potential and overcome limiting beliefs. Next one is, why is it important to take care of yourself intellectually? So my why for that one is to feed my desire to learn. Next, we have, why is it important to take care of yourself spiritually? For me, it's I am my best self when I slow down and act with intention. Then you'll want to write down exactly what things you're going to do to reach those goals. You have to be specific about how and when you're going to do this. So I'll use my board as an example again. Physically, my goals are to exercise for 30 minutes, 6 days a week. Emotionally, I have connect with friends once a month. So you can see there's the action and then there's a time frame set to it. Intellectually, I have listened to Embrace Your Inner Boldness podcast once a week. Actually, I don't have that one, but I do have listened to a podcast once a week. And realistically, that is a goal that I blow out of the water all the time because I listen to podcasts just about every day, not my own, other people's. And then spiritually, my goals are to meditate 5 times per week. You can update these goals as many times as you want to. If you get through a couple weeks and you realize that it's not quite working for you, change it. There's no hard and fast rules about how you do this. And you want to make sure that you don't beat yourself up if you're not perfect about it. My goal about exercising 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week, I don't think I've done that for 3 months or so. So it's time to update that goal. But I do try to get some activity in my week as much as I can. So my point there is I'm certainly not perfect about it, but the fact that I've got it written on a whiteboard and in my peripheral vision every single day does help me to do some of those actions, even if it's not perfect, but just having it there does motivate me. So to recap, what we do, how we act, what we think is more often than not filtered through our defenses because of our emotional wounds and our traumas. Whether they are big T traumas or little t traumas, they are traumas nonetheless. Another point is that feelings are real but not always true. So it's important to be analyzing how you're feeling, what you're thinking about it. Self-awareness, mindset, healthy habits are all essential to improving how we show up in the world. Shifting to a mindset that consistently notices all the good things we take for granted increases our coping skills when the not so good times come. Healing yourself, healing your inner world is absolutely the key to improving your outer world in every way. So your action item this week is to pay attention to yourself. Just notice, just simply notice how you are and what you say when you have a situation that might trigger you. What are your behavioral patterns when you get that emotional charge? Begin to take steps towards healing the things that you don't talk about. Do this because you absolutely deserve to live a big, confident, purposeful, energized life. Also, please remember to be kind to your mind. See you next time. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode of Embrace Your Inner Boldness. I hope you found inspiration and actionable tips to help you live more confidently. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss out on the latest insights and empowering stories. Please take a moment to also leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continue bringing you more content that uplifts and motivates. Empowering yourself and/or your team starts with embracing your inner boldness. When we stop playing small, we open the door to limitless potential. Remember, the only limit to your greatness is the one you set for yourself. Stay bold, stay fearless, and let's make this journey unforgettable.